What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Eclectic Beard Gaming Reactions. This go around, we'll be taking a look at when Britain nuked America twice. So, yeah, I've never heard of this. We're going to take a look. Now, if you haven't done it already, like, subscribe, notification bell. Let's go ahead and get into it.
In the 1960s, Great Britain nuked the United States not once, but twice. Fortunately for all concerned, the attacks were only training exercises, but so embarrassing were these attacks that they were hidden from the American public for about 50 years.
Yeah, I bet so. I've never heard of it till now. So, it's a good thing it was only a training exercise, but still, that's quite embarrassing.
Attacks that they were hidden from the American public for about 50 years, as well as being strenuously denied to the American press for decades. As far as America was concerned, its defenses were 99% effective. But in simulated attacks, Royal Air Force bombers managed to penetrate US airspace to launch nuclear attacks on New York City and several other important urban centers. Before I tell you how, a word from our sponsor. How did the British manage to penetrate the world's most heavily defended airspace? The answer is surprisingly simple and consists of two words: Avro Vulcan. The Vulcan first flew in 1952. The team that created it, led by Roy Chadwick, who had designed the famous Lancaster heavy bomber of World War II. A jet-powered, tailless, delta-wing, high-altitude strategic bomber, the Vulcan was the backbone of Britain's nuclear airborne deterrent during most of the Cold War, serving from 1956 until retirement in 1984.
Yeah, high altitude would have to be how you take and get above radar at that point, because the stealth bomber the U.S. Is so famously has made, that wasn't even a thing until like 1997. So in the 60s, high altitude for a bomber, that's very forward thinking.
This is the story of Exercise Sky Shield, when Britain nuked its closest ally, exposing how the Soviet Union could have done the same for real. In 1960, the United States decided to run the largest test of its air defenses in history. Exercise Sky Shield 1 occurred on the 10th of September 1960, and all commercial air traffic over the US and Canada was grounded, amounting to 1,000 US commercial flights and 700 general aviation aircraft, plus a further 31 foreign flights due to land in North America. The US Strategic Air Command would launch B-52 Stratofortresses and B-47 Stratojets to simulate a massive Soviet nuclear bomber force approaching North America from north and south. 360 US interceptor aircraft stood ready to defeat these enemy aircraft, which numbered 310. Among those 310 aircraft were 8 Royal Air Force Vulcan B-2 nuclear bombers. A flight of 4 flew from Scotland, while the other 4 launched from the British territory of Bermuda in the Atlantic Ocean. The American plan was to detect these enemy bombers by radar and other early warning systems, and then they would be intercepted and destroyed in simulated attacks by US jet fighters and missile batteries. The attacking bombers split their attacks between high and low altitude. The defending fighters did very well against the Stratojets and Stratofortresses, intercepting many of them, but the Vulcans proved more elusive opponents. The Vulcan flew at the highest altitude of the simulated Soviet bombers, cruising at 56,000 feet. One was successfully intercepted at this altitude over Goose Bay, Labrador, by a United States Air Force F-101 Voodoo, but the other 7 Vulcans all managed to penetrate American airspace to launch simulated bombing attacks on U.S. cities.
There's American exceptionalism for you. In our military, we like the whole walk softly, carry a big stick and everything like that. Yeah, that's... I can see why this was held secret for 50 years. Like, you wouldn't want to admit to something like that. Just saying. What are you going to, I'm still trying to figure out in my head how they took and grounded all those flights and it not make news that still has been talked about, because normally stuff like that happening at that point in time, that's an oddity that would be still normally talked about. So there had to be like media silence.
They then turned around and landed at Stephenville, Newfoundland. The question was, how had the Vulcan managed it? The answer was their highly advanced electronic countermeasures systems and the Vulcan's amazing maneuverability. For example, the flight of 4 aircraft that approached from Bermuda were successful because 3 of them put up a wall of electronic interference that prevented interception, while the 4th Vulcan carried out a simulated nuclear strike. This was all rather embarrassing for Strategic Air Command, which quickly buried all stories about British bombers having nuked US targets and confidently assured the American public that US air defenses were, as I said, 99% effective. However, the following year the Americans invited the RAF to take part in Exercise Sky Shield II. Perhaps the US AF was determined to show that the Vulcan's previous success was only a fluke, a one-time only event.
Why would you do it exactly a year later? Like, build up some better defenses, maybe? Come up with some new strategies? A year later. Okay.
Sky Shield II, which occurred on the 14th of August 1961, was an even bigger event than the first one. It caused 2,900 US and Canadian flights to be grounded, affecting 125,000 commercial passengers. During the exercise, 125 US and British bombers would be pitted against 1,800 fighters and 250 missile sites, and over 200,000 Air Force personnel from the US and Canada.
Again, that many commercial flights being grounded, even back then, that would have been big stuff. So, I mean, that's one of those things that, of course, this is probably around the time of, like, Operation Mockingbird with the CIA. We live in a free country. Really?
Coming up on 16.5 seconds. Now, continuing. Yeah, but I'm still ready now. Brace up hard here. Come up. 6 foot standing by flaps.
Again, 8 Vulcan B-2s participated, split again into 2 flights. One attacking on the northern route from RAF Lossiemouth in Scotland via Canada, and the other 4 aircraft on a southerly route from Kindley Air Force Base, Bermuda. The B-47 Stratojets simulated low-level Soviet bombers. The B-52s would attack between 35,000 and 42,000 feet, while the Vulcans again operated at the highest altitude, 56,000 feet. At the massive NORAD, or North American Air Defense Bunker at Colorado Springs, the U.S. top brass was joined by the RAF's Air Marshal Sir Kenneth Cross of Bomber Command and Sir Wallace Kyle, Chief of the RAF Technical Training Command, to monitor the exercise.
I could only imagine how tense that room might have been, especially after what had happened previously. It's funny that they took and put the bunkers, or NORAD, in a mountain in Colorado, which, if you're ever traveling through Colorado and you take a wrong turn, you wind up, don't accidentally go to that base. You can get in trouble.
Just before 2 p.m., U.S. interceptors pounced on the B-52s, approaching at the mid to high altitude level. The Vulcans also came in from the north, and again, due to the Vulcans' high-tech jamming equipment, only one was shot down by an F-101 Voodoo fighter. In fact, large numbers of U.S. fighters were scrambled, but they concentrated almost exclusively on the B-52s. When the Vulcans came over, the interceptors did not have sufficient fuel remaining to climb to 56,000 feet plus and engage them. The surviving 3 Vulcans conducted their attacks successfully, turned around and landed at Stephenville, Newfoundland. The southern attack force of 4 Vulcans from Bermuda reached a position 50 miles off the U.S. coast before fighters were scrambled to intercept. Again, 3 of the Vulcans unleashed an electronic jamming screen that kept the attacking F-102 Delta daggers busy, while the 4th aircraft crept round to the north and sneaked through.
That's crazy. They created an electrical wall that took and jammed where basically they run interference. So you got like military level Smokey and the Bandit type stuff going on. That's crazy. And for it to be in the 60s, have an advanced system like that for your aircraft, which is essentially enabled them to take and you don't have to have stealth when you can jam stuff like that because you can't be seen. That's awesome. That's awesome that technology existed at that point. Crazy though that we never it took being recommended this to actually hear about it.
This Vulcan proceeded to land at Plattsburgh Air Force Base in New York. If this had been a real attack, New York City could have been reduced to a smoking, irradiated hole in the ground. Many of the stratojets and stratofortresses had also managed to evade interception and launch simulated nuclear attacks, but not at the kind of success rate that the Vulcans enjoyed. In 2 massive exercises, of 8 Vulcans that attacked on each occasion, 7 had got through to their targets, an astounding survival rate against the huge might of the US air defenses. The Vulcans showed that with the right aircraft, America could be laid wide open to a nation-ending assault, something which the Soviet Union would have been very interested in. Fortunately for all concerned, the relationship between Britain and the United States never changed from special to decidedly antagonistic, and the Vulcans never came in anger. The American government also tried to make damn sure that nobody ever found out about the Vulcans nuking American cities. The US Air Force was very quick to deny rumors that RAF planes had once again successfully penetrated US airspace. In fact, the US government went so far as to classify all references to Vulcans included in the Sky Shield exercises. After all, if the RAF could practice nuke New York City, Washington, D.C., and even Chicago, the Soviets could do the same, if they could develop an aircraft as good as the Vulcan. As far as Strategic Air Command was concerned, the Vulcan episodes had never happened, and the US was well protected, and that protection, as I said, 99% effective. The Vulcan's successful attacks on America were only fully declassified in 1997, long after the Vulcan had left British service.
All right, so there we have it. When Britain nuked America twice, what gets me is the fact that you're in the middle of the Cold War, or the Cold War is going on. You're trying to take and make sure your air defense systems are good enough that Russia can't come over here, nuke the U.S. Britain does it in exercises twice, and instead of trying to develop stuff to make sure that can't happen again and invite them back, no, you wait until a year later to take it. You invite them back a year later, and the same thing happens again. And then you make sure nobody ever finds out about it, which might have been the smartest move, because if Russia had found out about this, they would have definitely been developing something with similar capabilities to the Vulcan. No doubt about it. If they probably already didn't have it. The thing about it, that shows a certain amount of arrogance that you have to be like, all right, we're just going to keep this quiet and be like, Ivan's not going to take and develop something that can have the same capability. Like, that kind of just, wow. Holy crap. Instead of taking and developing something and then trying until you actually intercept every one of the Vulcans, you take a big-headed approach. Jesus Christ, it's a wonder we never got nuked. That's mind-blowing. Once, as it's processing, the mind-blowing capability, the mind-blowing possibilities are just, it's like, wow, y'all could have been really, 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 really screwed on this. Wow. Like I said, that takes a certain level of just absolute pig-headed, like, just, oh my God, dude, that's crazy. And I'm sure that was part of Operation Mockingbird, because like I said, the only way you're going to keep that many civilian, commercial flights on the ground is with cooperation from not only the airlines, but also the media outlets who would have picked it up. Otherwise, it reported on what was going on. But Operation Mockingbird, they fed what they wanted Americans to hear. So I can guarantee, other than having 125,000 people talks amongst themselves, nobody ever heard about it. So that being said, thank you so much for watching. Y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves.